Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for sponsoring today's Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Working tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics' mission at horizontherapeutics.com.
Lots of SMA type 1 children don't have the ability to speak. And so these amazing parents are perceiving eye twitches and eyebrow raises and tongue movements, and that's how they know what that child needs. And so we're fortunate that Lucy can speak, but once we could start understanding and have a routine and methods to address kind of more stressful or dangerous situations, that made just a huge difference.
That's our guest this week, Chad Lunt. Chad is married to Cherisse, and the two of them have 3 children, including Lucy, age 12, who's been diagnosed with type 1 spinal muscular atrophy. We'll hear how the Lunt family has helped Lucy and about their hopes for the future in this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Say hello to host David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers of Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
And now let's hear this conversation between Chad Lunt and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Chad Lunt of Menlo Park, California, who's the father of 3, a vice president of consumer success at Kinestrol Technologies, a high-profile IoT startup that manufactures electrochromic windows, also known as smart glass. Chad, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
My pleasure.
You and your wife, Cherisse, have been married for 18 years and are the proud parents of 3 children, Dolan, 17, Jocelyn, 15, and Lucy, 12, who was diagnosed with type 1 spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
Yeah, I grew up, reverse chronology, at high school and junior high in Charleston, Illinois, about 4 hours south of Chicago, 4 years in Arlington, Mansfield, Texas, and then birth until then was Tempe, Mesa, Arizona area. And something about the family that I grew up in, I'll just share a wonderful memory that I think speaks to who they are. Every year, my father and mother would drive their 8 children from Illinois or Texas to the Tempe Mesa area to be with family for 2 weeks. So the first week was rotating between aunts and uncles and cousins' home, and then the second week we always went and did beach camping at Lake Powell, which borders the Arizona-Utah state line. And so, as you can imagine, the parents of 8, you have babies in baby stages for many years, and loving your children enough to take them in beach camp for a week kind of speaks to their dedication to our family and of the importance it is to them and us.
Thanks for sharing. If I remember, you're the oldest of the 8.
Correct.
So I imagine there was some additional responsibilities that were put on your shoulders, maybe once you got your driver's license and had to help getting your younger brothers and sisters around.
So I have a twin sister who was younger than me, and I'll say that she was more consistently responsible than I was, I think. But certainly I've tried to repent and cover my tracks a little bit. So, but yeah, certainly being the oldest has some requirements.
Excellent. So I'm sort of curious to know, what did your dad do for a living? What was his career about?
So he started his career in public accounting. It was Deloitte and Haskins, and eventually went to work for a client, is my understanding. He worked for tributaries of Colgate-Palmolive. The one that I remember best is he worked for Hill's Pet Products, pet food products, and then a veterinarian software division, and then from there, as an operations executive for some manufacturing companies in Illinois.
So is that the reason your family moved around a bit?
Yep, that's right. Work opportunities. I remember distinctly having kind of family meetings where he discussed moving from Arizona to Texas and what that meant, especially as we were so close to family. And then from Texas to Illinois, less impactful, because of we had already kind of cut those apron strings, so to speak. So, but all important moves in our life.
And is your dad still alive? What's he doing now?
He is still alive. They moved to Fruit Heights, Utah, a little bit north of Salt Lake, about 4 or 5 years ago. They were in Illinois for 26 years, something like that. And he does management consulting for some of the owners of companies he's worked for in the past. So most of those companies or portfolio companies are in the Midwest, and so he maintains his connections to Illinois and Indiana and keeps him busy.
Excellent. So I'm sort of curious to know, how would you characterize your relationship with your dad?
He is probably the single most important and positive influence in my life. He was, patient, somehow had the ability to be patient when he needed to be patient and stern when he needed to be stern, and has always been a huge supporter of me.
Well, thanks for sharing. I'm wondering if there's a story or two or takeaway, something that he did as a dad that you've tried to replicate as a dad yourself.
He really involved us in the things that were important to him. So much, if not all, of my dad's non-work family time was spent as a volunteer ecclesiastical leader for our church. What that required or entailed for him, or what he offered, was he would reach out to people and help them. And as you would expect, the people that need the most help and outreach often aren't the people that live next to you. They are people who have experienced challenges and heartache and difficulties that were frankly foreign to me, whether it was driving some of those people to and from church on Sundays, or visiting them during the week, or doing all kinds of tasks and requests. He involved us. He let us know that's how he let us know of the things that were important to him, because he had us join him.
So from what I remember, you got your education at Brigham Young and then an MBA at Arizona State University. Mm-hmm. And I remember you telling me that your career began with sort of an infamous experience as a young investment banking analyst with Lehman Brothers. And I used to work for Cherisse and Lehman Brothers back in the day. So I'm very familiar with that story and sad ending, and the financial crisis. And I'm wondering where your career took you from there.
It was an incredible institution in that you worked so much and learned so much, and frankly, got to interact with brilliant people. And so I really enjoyed that. And I will say I was not the best analyst in my class, but I learned an incredible amount.
So I'm sort of curious to know, how did you and your wife meet?
I'll say in our demographic, which is kind of lifetime members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints going to a church school, it was probably not that unique of a meeting. So we were in a social dance class together. So my only intention was to meet girls. And anyway, we met on the first day, and she was just kind of, I don't know how to say it other than the brightest person that I'd ever interacted with. And it didn't take long for me to decide, if it's not her, it needs to be someone like her. And so anyway, I'll save you the dancing puns, but we got to know each other better and better, and started dating in probably late September, October of 2002, and were married April of 2003, so relatively quickly. Then we had our first child in February of 2004, so 11 months later, we had a beautiful baby boy.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. That's fabulous. So let's switch gears and talk about special needs. So what is type 1 SMA, How was it diagnosed, and what was your first reaction to learning about the situation?
First question of what it is, your body produces a protein that controls signaling from brain to muscles. And I believe it's the SMN1 gene. And you have two. Everybody has two. And for most people, well, I don't know the statistics on it, but sometimes only one works or is recreating the protein, and no one will know. And in her instance, neither work as they should. So she generates that protein at a lower rate than it is lost in the body. And as a result, she is not able to control muscles. And SMA type 1 means that they never reach the milestone of being able to sit up on their own power. There are other types, SMA 1, 2, 3, and each of them are really just progress milestones that the individual reaches. How was it diagnosed? So we were noticing that she was unable to do baby push-ups, if you know what I mean. So where they're kind of lifting their head with their forearms to the ground. And we would watch, and my wife would kind of give her tummy time, and she just never was really lifting her head, and it was really frustrating for her. So we were concerned about this, and then I was doing some research. She said she was going to schedule an appointment with the neurologist, and I said, well, please make sure they test for this. She said, well, I hope it's not that, but sure, we will. About 3 weeks later, we were called in to meet in person with the neurologist and our pediatrician, and anytime a doctor has to meet with you in person to review results, it's not usually great news. So anyway, we were told that she has SMA type 1 and that there was no treatment, no cure, and that we should take her home and love her, and she would likely live to about 18 months was kind of the lifespan at the time.
Oh my.
So that was heavy news, as you would expect.
It sounds like it was like a very heavy situation. You already had two young kids, right? And you're coming up to speed on what the situation is with your third.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to suck the wind out of you. And I'm wondering if you can remember back those 12 years or so. What were your fears back then, in addition to the short life expectancy?
There was kind of an evolution of those fears. The first was, I'll admit, a little bit selfish. Like, how is this going to affect me, our family, what we can do together, my career, places we can live, and frankly, a little disappointed in myself, but that's honest. And then it changed to, what does this mean for my wife? And likely she's going to, and she has played the largest role in her care. How will this affect her? And how will, mortality affect my young, impressionable, tender children, other children, and really coming to terms with watching your child that you love, suffer, and knowing that additional suffering was coming. That was heavy.
Thank you for your authenticity. There's these different stages of grief that people experience when they get overwhelming news or things happen in their lives. And each person processes them a little bit differently. Some seem to speed through these various stages of grief. Others linger. They don't all experience them in the same order or to the same magnitude. And it's really enlightening to have you share where you were initially and then how that progressed and how your focus changed. So I really appreciate your authenticity. Was there some meaningful advice that you got early on, whether it's from doctors or other families that you might have met that had a child with SMA, that helped you and Cherisse navigate the path that you've been on?
What I'm considering meaningful advice is perspective-driven advice rather than tactical. And I can't remember specific advice at or around that time that was just a huge lift as far as perspective. I will say that having children, starting our family young, and coping with this challenge, my familiarity with sacrifices that my ancestors and progenitors have made for things that they felt were important was a strength for me, in that I knew that people who had gone before me and that I was related to had done hard things and had shown kind of grace and strength in how they endured. And so that helped me kind of have faith in myself and know that I could do it. Not that it would be easy, but that I believe that I could do it.
What were some of the more important decisions that you made as parents raising a child with these unique challenges?
I'll say the best decision I made, unbeknownst to this future circumstance, was to marry Cherisse. She has a motor and like a determination and positive attitude. You can meet anyone who knows her will support what I'm saying, in that she sets her mind to something and she does it. And whether it was accessing county or state resources or the best neurologist or SMA team, treatments, the ongoing day-to-day care when we didn't have nursing for many, many years, just stoic. So I'll say that was the best decision, again, prior to this. And then watching her and trying my best to kind of keep up with work and other children and other uses of my time, trying to have some balance and maintain your emotional and mental health. She's been inspiring to me, and I don't really have a good answer. I don't have certainly no silver bullet. Trying to stay positive, trying to stay supportive would be my greatest recommendation. So,
well, thanks for sharing, and thanks for emphasizing the important role that Cherisse has played, not only in your life but your children's lives, all of your children's lives. It's really important, and not to focus on the negative, but I'm wondering what some of the bigger challenges that you've encountered are.
So, divorce rate in the country is high and growing. I think it's over 50% at this point. And divorce rate among parents with special needs children, my understanding is that it is higher. And so I'll wax a little philosophical here. I believe that love requires two ingredients, and those ingredients are time and service. If you spend enough time with someone and you serve someone enough, you will love them. What happens with a special needs child is that you don't get to spend as much time or serve each other directly. I'll say probably the single thing that led to the most, marital strife was missing sleep. Because she is in a constant state of pulmonary or cardiopulmonary distress, that she could at any moment swallow her spit down the wrong pipe and pass away. And she doesn't have necessarily the vocals and certainly the mobility to protect her airway. And so she requires constant watch. And for many, many years, it was taking shifts at night, all through the night, sleeping next to her pulse, air quotes, sleeping next to her pulse oximeter, listening to how her BiPAP was, how she was breathing from years 1 to 4. She was in and out of the NICU or PICU at the hospital constantly. And there were many times where, coded and intubation and traumatic experiences. And so that was hard. Essentially carrying a child along the fence, along the top of the fence between the eternities and life, emotionally taxing, physically taxing, and I guess taxing to a relationship.
One of the things I heard you refer to is what I think about as the hypervigilance that you have to maintain 24/7. And, you don't want to take your eye off the ball because something can happen in a split second and, change the course of things. That must take a lot of energy, right? Take a lot of focus.
It's really difficult to explain, or I almost feel like it's not something you can teach or share with someone. That perspective can, and this isn't meant to come across in an arrogant way or whatever, but it's a perspective that can only be kind of earned or experienced. And I'll say that my perspective is less than my wife's in that way, in that she has invested more. But yeah, there's, the fear of failure is just incredible.
Was there a turning point in the experience that you can reflect back on now?
I will say that throughout the whole thing, there has been, I'll call it an undeserved or palpable peace that has allowed us to find some reduction to anxiety or stress or challenge. Certainly when she was able to vocalize, once she could speak, and even with, and when I say speak, she has an accent as you would expect, but she can speak, and that changed things. When she could finally start communicating what her needs were in even a simple way. I mean, lots of SMA type 1 children don't have the ability to speak. And so these amazing parents are perceiving eye twitches and eyebrow raises and tongue movements, and that's how they know what that child needs. And so we're fortunate that Lucy can speak, but once we could start understanding and have a routine and methods to address kind of more stressful or dangerous situations, that made just a huge difference. And I think that was somewhere between 4 and 6 years old when it kind of started gelling, and we started understanding, okay, this is as important, and this is not, and this is the routine. And so that made a big difference. So our middle child, our daughter, is very responsible, and at some level we started figuring out how to get nursing. And so, we would sleep, we'd have the chance to get a full night's rest, that started happening consistently a couple nights a week, and now pretty consistently, and that's made the world of difference. But I mean, I think anybody in any situation that is sleep deprived will tell you that made a big difference when I slept more.
Well, thanks for sharing. I'm sort of curious to know, when did the Spinraza treatment come into play, or the decision to pursue that, and how has that changed things?
I believe it's been 3 or 4 years. So when she was about 8, we heard about this treatment, and, it was in trials at Stanford. We live about a mile from Stanford, or a mile and a half. And we were excited about it, and it was difficult to gain access to it. So my wife, who I give credit to, found a neurologist in Fresno that would provide the treatment. So the treatment's given intrathecally, so it's a spinal tap, and requires lots of other supporting, I'll call it, medical staff. And so he would do it with essentially a mild sedative and then a syringe. Anyway, so that's what gave her access to it initially. So we would drive to Fresno, and angel of a man would, who was at the twilight of his career. And, as a neurologist, I'm sure up to that point, it was probably pretty frustrating in that you could diagnose, but you couldn't treat because it's so difficult. Anyway, long story short, that's how we first started. And we've since transferred to Stanford, and so it's only a mile and a half away. And Lucy can absolutely tell or feel the difference between doses, and it has prevented the disease from progressing further. And I would say there has even been, arguably some increased functionality and relief from the disease.
Yeah, well, I know it's expensive, but I've also heard it referred to as a miracle drug. And I don't know if you would agree with those statements.
To me, it's magic. Like, how do you put a chemical in somebody's spinal fluid and then it makes a chromosome work a little bit better, or some RNA? Like, it's magic to me. So I won't pretend to understand the science. But.
I'm sort of curious to know what impact Lucy's situation's had on her older siblings, or the rest of your family for that matter.
Sure. So being somewhat self-aware, I am the kind of parent that, unfortunately, that wants to remove difficulty from my children. If there's discomfort or an experience I want them to have, I'll usually make sacrifices and do what I need to do to remove that friction or adversity. And frankly, I wish I wasn't that way, and I am. But friction and adversity is required for strong character and the kind of children that I want, even though I'm not following the equation. So Lucy has been a source of training and teaching empathy, of providing service in meaningful and heartfelt ways with, only the return of a good feeling or a thank you from mom and dad at best. And so she has taught humanity and mortality and humility in a way that we could never have otherwise taught our children. So as a person of faith, she has done more for us as a family and for her brothers and sisters to crystallize and develop their faith than I could have otherwise done by myself. And I attribute the goodness that I see. I attribute a lot of the goodness that I see and frankly myself and my two older children to having to live in and around and near her and serve her.
That's fabulous. Thanks for sharing. Have there been any supporting organizations that your family have relied on, either directly or indirectly, for Lucy or your family's benefit?
I would say camaraderie and feeling like you're supporting this network of people that was provided to us through the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation. So she is a young woman who is a little bit older with the same condition as Lucy that passed a few years ago, and her parents were very positive and inspiring people in the community, and we're honored and happy to contribute to that organization any way that we can. Certainly, as you would expect, family contributed in meaningful ways, trying to provide support and help, and through our church community. And then Cure SMA was another organization that we affiliated with. Yeah, I'm sure that I missed someone that I owe a significant amount of gratitude towards, but those are the ones that come to mind that we're affiliated with.
I think in the past conversation, you also mentioned that you have a great school district.
Oh, yeah. So thank you. So the Menlo Park School District, I can almost not comprehend the level of sacrifice and dedication and focus and above and beyond that many of these inclusion specialists and therapists and nurses and others. It's definitely been a team effort, and these amazing people have, done more than just their job. They've kind of loved and served Lucy. So thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, well, nobody gets there by themselves. And thank you for acknowledging that, there's been other players beyond your family that have played an important role.
Sure.
You've made reference to your spirituality almost from the beginning of our conversation. So I don't need to ask the question, but I'm wondering what role spirituality has played in your lives.
I think that one of the greatest benefits of faith with it, which is by itself a belief in something, is hope. And the hope that has come from my faith and belief in Jesus Christ and his efforts and sacrifice and teachings has given me peace and direction, and I would say has allowed some of my belief to progress from faith to knowledge. That I have done it long enough and tested it sufficiently that I know that by doing certain things, I can find relief and additional hope, and that my children can find greater peace and protection. So I know that that's maybe a little bit direct and perhaps arguable for some people, but for me, I feel enough life experience to say that there are certain things I know at this point, and one of those things being the hope has carried me, and so the hope that comes from my faith is critical to me.
Well, thanks for sharing. I'm thinking about advice now, and I'm wondering, beyond what we've already discussed, if there's any advice you can provide a dad who has a child with special needs, maybe a younger child with special needs?
I think that if I were to give advice, it would be, and maybe it's easier said than done, but try and find the joy of the struggle. I know that it's easy to find joy and perhaps distraction and entertainment from, another fishing trip or hunting trip, and I love those things and want to do them as much as I possibly can. Water skiing, anything, right? Those fun things. But to find the satisfaction and the joy from the support and care you can try your best to give to your wife, in some instances your partner, or your child, finding the joy and satisfaction that comes from a incredibly challenging struggle. I think people find it different ways, but that would be my suggestion is that you're going to miss out on fun, and you're going to miss out on some of the things that you see your friends and family experiencing because of this sweet person that's in your life. But if you can try and see the good and find the good that's coming into your family's life from that experience and that work, that struggle, it's helped me be happier. And again, I just sympathize with those fathers and mothers who are dealing with that, and certainly don't pretend that my situation is harder or easier. I would say in some cases easier than some of them, but I would encourage them to somehow find that place where the struggle and sacrifice and missed experiences enjoyed or celebrated in some kind of way.
Yeah, that's an important insight. I've heard it referred to as that at some level that there's a purpose in the pain,
mm-hmm.
and that you can only see that when you look backwards, right, and connect some of the dots. Very difficult to look forward and try to connect those dots. So I think it's with the wisdom, the understanding, the experience that you referenced that maybe you can find some of the joy that you're referring to. So thanks again for sharing.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of curious to know, why is it that you've agreed to be a mentor father as part of the Special Fathers Network?
So much of the burden and requirement and pressure to raise good citizens and good humans and good people rests on women's shoulders. And some of that is societal norms which need to, I think, adjust to allow men and require men to contribute more equally. But some of it is, from what I've observed, pure capability, whether it's determination and resilience or patience and nurturing. Women have just this incredible responsibility. And I think that the more men who can provide a positive example of the things you identified at the beginning of the call, work ethic, morality, and having moral integrity, whatever you believe is right, you stick to that. And the more we can involve men in being examples and being an equal support to the next generation, the better it will be for that next generation, and the better it will be for women, in the sense that at a minimum, men will be more empathetic and sympathetic to what, the weight they feel. And so that's part of why I want to be involved with something like this.
Well, thank you. We're thrilled to have you. Thanks for being involved. Let's give a special shout out to Kim Nye of the Tess Research Foundation for helping connect us.
Oh, absolutely.
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, I enjoyed the conversation and appreciate your patience in dealing with some of the emotion that sometimes comes to the top. So,
Well, it's very authentic. Thanks. If somebody wants to learn more about the Tess Research Foundation, the Gwendolyn Strong Foundation, the Cure SMA Facebook group, or just to contact you, what's the best way about going to do that?
Certainly, I can include my email in the comments or notes of this podcast. I think that if you are interested in learning more about my family or us, my wife does a wonderful job of kind of documenting Lucy and the things that we do. Her Instagram account is CHERT as in Tom, LU, N as in Nancy, T as in Tom, so Share T Lunt. She does a great job of trying to kind of highlight and share the positive things that come from this experience, and happy to try and be encouraging and positive to anyone that would, want to reach out to me. So,
Well, be sure to include your email and then Cherisse's Instagram account in the show notes, so it'll make it as easy as possible for people to follow up.
Great.
Chad, thank you for your time and many insights. As a reminder, Chad is just one of the dads who's part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stcenturydads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax-deductible contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Chad, thanks again.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, presented by the Special Fathers Network. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for fathers to support fathers. Go to 21stcenturydads.org. That's 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Also, please be sure to register for the Special Fathers Network bi-weekly Zoom calls held on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stcenturydads.org.
The Dad to Dad podcast was produced by Couch Audio for the Special Fathers Network. Thanks again to Horizon Therapeutics, who believe that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics at horizontherapeutics.com.